in Britain right across the board that can get people to the top table.
Well, you should have been doing that for years as a Labour government in power. You know, representing
David, we improved schools. I don't know if you maybe you weren't going through schools during the Labour government, and you certainly haven't chosen to go through a state school now, but with your own kid. But David, under Labour schools improved hugely under Tony Blair.
When was the last time Labour were in power?
14 years ago. It's a long time
And
ago.
the last time Labour were in power, they were so close to the middle ground, they were almost conservative. So that's what the voters are looking for, is that middle ground. I mean, I can't see...
So what... All right, David, let me understand this. What kind of Labour do you want? Do you want what Jeremy Corbyn was offering? Is that what you like?
No, God, no. I'm a socialist. Why would I not be a socialist? It's a beautiful concept. I want a Labour that represents British people.
Describe himself in that way as well. That's why I ask you.
Well, I mean, socialism is wonderful to get people involved. But I think that if we had a Labour government that was more centralist, a lot more centralist, or any government that was a lot more centralist, I think the further left the rhetoric, the further right the reaction, and vice versa. So I think that there's an identity crisis going on with teenagers at the moment.
So get to that. That doesn't make sense, because the truth is, if we had this left-wing socialist government that I think you say you want, probably you'd end up paying a bit more tax. Are you happy with that?
I would be happy to pay more tax for what I want, no problem.
You would be happy to pay more tax. Good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if I could send my daughter to a state school and not worry about her getting bullied, or come home thinking that she wants to be another sex because of the left-wing ideology that is taught by teachers, you know, then it would worry me to pay more tax. I would save money, wouldn't I?
Come on, David. I mean, I just don't recognise that. If your daughter comes home and it's because that is a fact for a very small percentage of young people across the country. It's got nothing to do with teachers in Manchester. Nothing to do with teachers in Manchester. Come on.
So how can Labour not get... So if you look at the media's left-wing, the schools are left-wing, the universities are left-wing, everybody's left-wing, still can't get elected.
The media's left-wing? Rupert Murdoch's media's left-wing? The Times?
The BBC is left-wing. Well, I mean, who reads The Sun, to be fair, at the time?
The BBC is left-wing?
You don't think the BBC is left-wing?
No, I don't.
You really don't think the BBC is left-wing?
I don't. I mean...
You think it is a right-wing or impartial?
You just said you were quite keen on that, so I'm trying to... This is all very confused. I thought you wanted left-wing, but I don't actually. I think the BBC has a tough job, broadly. There are things that they do, and I disagree with them, but broadly they try and sort of go down the middle, actually. In this kind of public service, I don't think they're left-wing, but I certainly don't think you can describe the media in the UK as left-wing. Same for The Guardian and The Independent and The Mirror. I think the rest of the firmament is most definitely in the centre or centre-right or right. It's not left.
So the media that you're talking about, the broadsheets, are read by a minority of people in this country. So I wouldn't walk in a caf tomorrow morning in the middle of Manchester and see somebody reading the Telegraph. But I bet if I ask 10 of them who they vote, I bet 6 of them would vote Tory.
Or they might read in the Sun, or the Mail, or the Express. Neither of which would describe themselves, none of which would describe themselves as left-wing.
No, but I bet there'd be more Tory voters in a CAF than Labour voters, because working class British white males are just not listened to by the left. They're not. Unless you can explain to me how you're trying to encourage me to vote for you, which all I hear about the plans from the left is...
What's been working class white males? Why did it suddenly become working class white males?
Well, okay, because that's what I am. I'm a working class white male. So I'm talking about me, personally.
well, you said you were working class, but you moved up a bit now over the years, and you're sending your daughter to private school, which doesn't sound that working class. But I see the point, and you're saying that you've been abandoned by the Labour Party, you've been abandoned by left, and I think because of the trans issue, you're also saying that something that's happening with identity politics is turning you off.
Well, I mean, I just think that identity politics, I mean, I'm 50 years of age, and when I speak to young people about identity politics, I tell them, look, I don't understand what you're talking about. It doesn't make much sense to me at all. But, you know, on a personal level, it frightens the life out of me. You know, I think that if you do research that side of life on any level, you know, it frightens me as a parent, and I think that sending my kids off to college and university when they're old enough to go, that feels like a big concern for them. I don't think that, you know, that the way it's viewed by the left, I don't think it's impartial, and I think it should be a lot more impartial.
David, thank you for your views. Let's speak again. Definitely thank you for all of your calls hour. But coming up after the news at midday, why is violence increasing against our shop workers? We've spoken about shoplifting on this programme before, and the issues often go hand in hand, but this week it's been revealed that the UK shop workers are facing 1,300 incidents of violence and abuse a day. This is a hugely concerning number. The pressure's mounting on the government to intervene to protect retail employees who are currently failing. Are you a shop worker or a security guard? I want to hear from you if you've experienced violence or abuse. If you're a police officer, have you responded to any of these incidents? Is this issue becoming more rife in the community? Have you seen people behaving like this? What needs to be done to protect our shop workers? Call me on 0345 6060
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at midday, the Foreign Secretary says more financial sanctions could be imposed on Russia following the death of Alexei Navalny. David Cameron's joined G7 ministers to call on the Kremlin to fully clarify how the jailed opposition leader died. Military analyst Sean Bell says internal pressure from the Russian people is more likely to have an impact, though.
Now Russia's suffered 300,000 casualties in its campaign to touch families across Russia, and now a voice for change in Russia, Alexei Navalny, has also been killed. All of this is going to gradually increase pressure, tensions, and that's with the presidential elections approaching. That's why Putin is clamping down on protesters.
Research has found a quarter of new mums may not return to work because childcare is too expensive. Nearly half of parents with preschool-aged children say they're getting into debt or using their savings to pay for it. Ministers say they're currently rolling out an expansion of childcare support in England. Senior police figures have hit out at sexist and homophobic social media abuse targeted at the officer who delivered the Queen's funeral and the King's coronation. Commander Karen Findlay was announced as the new Assistant Chief Constable of the British Transport Police on Friday. Director of Law and Order Foundation, Norman Brennan, told LBC the comments she's received since are vile.
Social media should be a place where people engage, interact, exchange views, and it appears that any time the word police is mentioned on social media now, the barrage of abuse is appalling.
Serial rapist David Carrick has been stripped of part of his state-funded Metropolitan Police pension. Is estimated to be worth more than £10,000 a year. Last year, the former officer was jailed for at least 30 years after being convicted of multiple crimes against 12 women. The Prince of Wales has announced he will build a £3 million social housing development on his own land in Cornwall. Prince William says he will supply the land near Newquay for free and cover all the construction costs.
LBC Weather.
With Ripple Energy, climate action you can be proud of.
Any rain will gradually clear this afternoon, leaving a dry day for most. Sunny spells for some and a high of 14 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Lottie Morley.
Sounds like someone's lowered prices with their Tesco Club card. Like Persil 53 wash laundry detergent, now just £6.75, down from £9. With Tesco Club card, everyone can feel that. To lower prices. Tesco, every little helps.
Majority of larger stores end 6th of March. Club card app required.
Steve Jackson for BBC. Jane Rhodes has won equestrian medals for Australia at 3 separate Olympics and is still hoping to go to Paris later this year. He was taking part in a competition in New South Wales, in which riders have been encouraged to wear extraordinary costumes. But the sight of the 50-year-old show jumping in a day-glow orange mankini is apparently too much for someone. The sport's governing body in Australia has stopped him from competing while it investigates complaints. Several of Shane Rose's fellow Olympic show jumpers have accused Equestrian Australia of overreacting.
Cricket and England's men have collapsed to defeat in the third test against India in Rajkot. The hosts set them an unlikely target of 557 for victory. Jonathan Agnew was watching.
It's extraordinary. All done in 40 overs. They only got 122 because Mark Wood slogged 33 at the end. They were 91 for 9 when Hartley was out. They threw away a potentially very encouraging position. They threw that away on the third morning, and they've paid the price for it.
BBC News.
This is BBC Radio 4. Coming up, appetite suppressant, glucose control and inflammation antidote. The scientific research around the power of bitter foods and why we perhaps should grow to love them in the food program in half an hour. Before that, here on Radio 4, it's the final episode of the series of Just a Minute.
Welcome to Just a Minute. Sue Perkins here, and as the minute waltz fades away, what a wonderful pleasure it is to welcome you back to Just a Minute. Time now to introduce you to the 4 talents who will be smashing Just a Minute this week. They are Paul Merton, Tony Hawks, Heidi Regan and Eleanor Tiernan. Please whoop and cheer for all of them. I'm going to be asking them to speak on a subject I give them for 60 seconds without hesitating, repeating or deviating. Let's see how it goes. And Paul, we're going to start with you. And the subject we're going to begin with is Al Capone. Please speak for 60 seconds, please, Paul, on Al Capone, starting now.
He came to prominence in America during the Prohibition era, which is roughly the 1920s, where you couldn't legally buy alcohol in America. He was one of those gangsters that profited enormously at the time. Eventually, they caught up with him for not paying his taxes, and he was sent to prison. There was a movie vaguely based on his life called Scarface. He did indeed have a scar on his face, and he was very shy about it and tried to avoid being photographed on that particular side of his visage. Al Capone was also the name of my first cat, and what a beautiful creature it was. It had little furry whiskers and big ears and the most cute face, and I remember once saying to this kid, we buzz then.
Heidi, face, right?
Face, two-face.
Scarface and face.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Scarface had a scar on his face and
scar on his face. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, listen there, Heidi.
I've been playing this game a lot, and Paul's got lots of different names for his cats.
In a previous programme, I could have told you about my cat was called Omar Sharif. Yeah. I didn't bother.
Yeah. Correct challenge, Heidi. Well done. Well listened out for. You've got 22 seconds to talk about Al Capone, and your time starts now.
Paul has covered everything I've ever known in my life about Al Capone. I don't know what his favourite food was. Okay, thank you, please.
Was there a repetition of no?
Yes, no.
No and no, 9.
Yeah, I said it twice. I said he's covered everything I know.
You don't want to keep going here, do you?
I'm really happy to give it away.
Okay.
Listen, I mean, you said it yourself. You've had enough, and it was more of an intervention than a challenge there for Tony, who stepped in like the gallant gent he is to say, right, I'll have it, so you can have it, Tony. 14 seconds on Al Capone, starting now.
I see myself as a kind of Al Capone.
Capone, the dyslexic king of America.
Yes. Your challenge, Paul.
Well, unfortunately, the subject is Al Capone and not what Tony said.
Al Capone. It's a great challenge, Paul. You've got 10 seconds. It's back with you starting now.
Hooch is one of the illegal drinks that were around at the time. And if you drunk this, there was tendency to send people blind. And Al Capone was undoubtedly amongst all the...
Paul spoke as the whistle went, means he gets an all-important point. And Eleanor, we are with you next. So this subject is the day I left school. 60 seconds, please. Your time starts now. The late... I'm going to say there that as a very new player of the game, I think it's right to give you the benefit of the doubt here. So, we're going to hear a lot more on the day I left school. Eleanor, starting now.
The day I left school was a Friday, and that was a day of intense emotion. My friends and I all hugged and kissed each other. So happy were we to be leaving that premises. There was nuns there that we did not turn our faces to, got on the bus and went to our homes where we thought we might never have a television to watch.
I mean, you've been buzzed repeatedly by Paul, but I wish people could see what we're seeing, which is this.
I mean, every word was a total surprise to you.
You received every syllable like a miracle. It was beautiful to watch and behold. I loved it. Paul, you did challenge, though. You did buzz. What was your challenge?
Well, it was a hesitation. It was a sort of slowing down a bit.
But you did speak for 42 seconds.
Yes.
To be fair, Sue, she wasn't talking for all of those 42 seconds.
True that. But 18 seconds left. Paul, on the day I left school, starting now.
I often dream about the day I left school. In fact, I dreamt just the other night about that particular event. And it's one of those things where you suddenly get very anxious about it and you think, what's my life going to be like once I leave this school? And then you realise in the middle of your nighttime thoughts that actually you're asleep and you aren't going to be leaving school that day.
Well done, Paul. Smashed it. Speaking as the whistle went, get the point. And Tony, we are with you now. Let's see what we've got in store. Your subject, oh, it's natural. Natural to you. Raising hell. You can speak, please, for 60 seconds on raising hell. Your time starts now.
You might imagine that after we finish these recordings, we go down to the dressing room and sit quietly and have tea. But no, we raise hell. Paul and I love dancing to Yes Sir, I Can Boogie by Baccarat.
Don't tell them that. He's giving away secrets of our private life.
I know. I dread to think where he's going next, Paul.
I'm just panicked. I haven't got a chance.
No, I mean, I understand.
Can't give us something secret.
Listen, can I just say that what goes on in the bowels of the BBC should never stay in the bowels of the BBC, just to be clear. But don't shame Paul, because much as he gives himself naturally to rhythm and dance, he doesn't like talking about it publicly. So with that caveat in place, Tony, you've got 43 seconds on raising hell starting now.
There may have been a little bit of fantasy about what I just told you, but the next bit is true. On the coffee table there are some chocolate chip biscuits. That man over there ate 5 of them before all this began. And he was...
I need the energy for me dancing. Telling people I had 5 chocolate chip cookies. No, I'm lying. I need 5, I had 4 of them. Some deviation.
I would say that the pack was flaccid by the time I got to them. So So in this instance, I will say to Tony that you get the subject back, but please stop being specific in attacking Paul. We don't know how many biscuits he ate before he gave way to dance.
Yeah.
28 seconds starting now.
It is something that a group of people might do if they were angry, perhaps. Raise hell. Or if they were particularly happy.
Paul.
Repetition of raise.
Yes, raising is on the cards. So 19 seconds is available to you, Paul, on raising hell. This is your chance to put the record straight.
Absolutely.
Your time starts now.
I had a kitten called Hell, and I raised her and what a beautiful feline it was. Hell used to walk around the neighbourhood and people would say, look, here comes Hell, create an enormous fuss as it sprays up the wall. And people would say to me, where do you get these gorgeous pets from? And I'd say, it's all, what was that?
I think people might have...
There was...
Two people,
there were
yes.
2 people. Well done.
Very good.
And the extraordinary thing about that challenge is it leaves you with half a second. So, what an intervention. Tell us whatever you fancy, really, on raising hell in 0.5 seconds starting now.
The rolling...
Eleanor speaking as the whistle went means she gains that all-important point. Now, Heidi, I'd like to speak for 60 seconds on cult classics. Yeah, without hesitating, repeating or deviating. And your time starts now.
I guess your classic cults are the ones where they all think it's doomsday, or where they sleep with a guru, or those ones where everyone does yoga. I have never joined a cult, not because I have a strong mind, but I don't have the core strength for the Pilates. If we're talking specifics, I'd say the big ones are your Charles Mansons or your Scientology. I don't know if I can say that on the BBC. Maybe I'll...
Repetition of B.
Indeed. I enjoyed that immensely. It's educational. It teaches us to avoid... I mean, I'm suspicious of yoga anyway, but you're right, it's a gateway drug. 25 seconds more on cult classics starting now.
We often think of television programmes being cult classics. Classics? Classics.
Tony, you buzzed.
Yes, deviation from the English language.
Indeed.